The snow had only just begun to fall in Hallstatt, a quiet village nestled against the deep waters of Lake Hallstatt. The Alps stood like ancient guardians, shrouded in mist. It was the kind of winter that silenced everything, except for the sound of footsteps crunching in the snow. Inside a modest wooden cottage near the water's edge lived 12-year-old Elias Gruber. He was a quiet boy with a curious mind and a deep affection for music. His grandfather, Joseph, had once been a celebrated violinist in Vienna, but now lived a secluded life after a mysterious accident ended his career. Elias would often sneak into the attic where the old violin case sat gathering dust. The instrument inside had an unusual glow and a carved inscription that read, "For den, der Zuhört," for the one who listens. Joseph never spoke of the violin. He forbade Elias from touching it, saying it brought only silence, not sound. But that only fueled Elias's curiosity. One evening, after a long snowfall, Elias heard something strange. A faint melody drifted through the attic ceiling, not from speakers, not from outside, but from within the house. Soft, eerie, and impossibly clear. He crept upstairs, careful not to wake his grandfather. As he approached the violin case, the sound grew louder. The lock on the case had somehow come undone. He opened the lid. The violin was glowing, not from any reflection or light, but from within its wood. As he reached out to touch it, a voice echoed through the attic, gentle but urgent. "Play only when the bells toll." Startled, Elias spun around. No one was there. Behind him, the ancient church tower rang once, then twice, then 3 times. Elias gripped the violin. Snowflakes fell through a crack in the roof. The room went silent. Then the clock struck 4, and the strings of the violin began to hum on their own. The 4th toll faded into the cold air. Elias stood still, breath held, as the attic fell utterly silent. The violin, warm and strangely heavy, trembled slightly in his hands. He had not touched the bow, yet the strings continued to resonate softly, like a breath held too long. Suddenly, footsteps sounded on the wooden stairs below. He snapped the case shut and turned just as his grandfather appeared in the doorway. Joseph froze. His eyes locked on the violin case. His voice was sharp but quiet. "You opened it." Elias nodded. Joseph stepped into the room, the light from the window catching the lines on his weathered face. "You must never open it again. Do you hear me? Never." "But it was playing," Elias insisted. "It sounded like it wanted me to listen." Joseph placed a hand on the case. He was trembling. "I knew it would come back. I prayed I wouldn't live to see it." He turned and left the room without another word. That night, Elias lay in bed listening to the lake wind tapping gently at the window. He couldn't sleep. The melody still echoed faintly in his mind. A phrase unfinished. In the darkest hour of the night, he crept back into the attic. The violin case sat quietly in the corner, closed once more. He approached it, breath slow, and noticed something new. A note had been slipped beneath it. He unfolded the yellowed paper. "When the bells toll 4, the path reopens. Bring it home." The attic was empty. No sign of Joseph. No footsteps. No breath but his own. And outside, from across the sleeping village, the church bells began to toll once again.
1, 2,
3,
4.
The next morning, Joseph was already awake, sitting silently by the stove with a letter in hand. His eyes were distant. When Elias entered, he did not look up. "You received something," Elias said gently. Joseph held the envelope toward him. "It's from Vienna. From people who once believed in music. Now they only fear it." Elias opened the letter. The message was brief. "The cycle begins. The boy is the last. Send him to us before All Souls' Night." "That's 8 days away," Elias whispered. Joseph finally met his eyes. "I tried to protect you, tried to lock it away. But the violin chose you. It never chooses lightly." Elias asked, "What does it mean by cycle?" Joseph took a deep breath. The violin was not built for performance. It was built for memory. Every 100 years, it wakes. And someone, always someone young, is drawn to finish what began centuries ago. A song not meant for this world. Elias looked down at the case. It wants me to go to Vienna. Joseph nodded. There's a chapel in the old city, St. Michael's. Go there. You'll be expected. That evening, as the last light dipped behind the Alps, Joseph handed Elias a train ticket and a sealed envelope marked with the conservatory's crest. He whispered, "Do not play it again until you are there. And do not let anyone else hold it." The bells rang 4 times that night. Elias didn't sleep. Elias boarded the early train, a foggy dawn casting the hills in silver mist. He sat by the window, the violin case beside him, and watched as the mountains rolled past like sleeping giants. The carriage was mostly empty, except for one man. He wore a dark overcoat and a green velvet scarf. His face was sharp, pale, his eyes a gray that seemed almost blue in certain light. He watched Elias without blinking. Each time the train stopped, Elias tried to change seats. But the man always followed. At last, near Linz, Elias slipped into the luggage carriage. Wooden crates and old trunks surrounded him. The smell of coal and cold metal filled the air. He nestled behind a stack of parcels, holding the case tightly. His heart thudded with each passing mile. Then, the velvet-scarfed man entered. "Don't hide," he said softly. "I know what you carry." Elias stayed silent. The man stepped forward. That violin was meant for someone else. But no matter. As long as it reaches the chapel, the result is the same. The train lurched violently. Crates toppled. The violin case slipped from Elias's grasp and struck the floor. It creaked open. One string rang out. The man fell to his knees, clutching his ears. Elias seized the case and ran, jumping from the slowing train as it neared the next station. In the distance, a tower bell rang. Rather than heading straight to Vienna, Elias took a detour. He followed a path his grandfather had once mentioned, to the town of Salzburg, the place where the violin was born. There, hidden in the shadow of the Festung, was a derelict workshop half consumed by ivy and snow. Inside, dust blanketed every surface. Tools still hung in place, long untouched. A cracked window let in a shaft of light that fell upon a single object, a journal, bound in dark leather. Elias opened it. The handwriting was cramped but elegant. It belonged to Matthias Albrecht, the maker of the violin. Albrecht had crafted 6 instruments, each tied to ancient tonal structures, each meant to contain echoes, not just sounds, but spirits. In the heart of the Austrian Alps, nestled between snow-dusted peaks and a still, shimmering lake, lies the ancient village of Hallstatt. The cobbled lanes wind between centuries-old wooden homes, their shutters painted in faded reds and greens. A morning mist curls through the pine trees above, carrying with it the soft scent of earth and frost. In one such home, near the edge of the lake, a boy named Lucas Bauer sat beside a narrow window, sketching quietly on a pad of yellowed paper. Lucas, 14, had always been different from the others. While most boys his age in Hallstatt dreamed of football or skiing, Lucas was enchanted by stories whispered by the wind, by the rustling leaves, by the silence between the mountains. That morning, something had shifted. The mist outside was heavier than usual, thick like a veil, and silent in a way that made even the birds pause. As he drew the outline of an old forest gate, one he had never seen but often imagined, his pencil broke clean in 2. He frowned. It had happened again. Each time Lucas drew something entirely from imagination, it somehow came into being. Last month, he had sketched a narrow stone bridge with strange carvings. Days later, during a hike with his uncle, they discovered it half buried beneath moss in the northern woods, exactly as Lucas had drawn it. He had never told anyone. Lucas slid the sketch under his bed and grabbed his coat. The air outside was crisp and tasted like snowfall. As he walked along the lakeside path, the mist seemed to part for him, opening a trail through the dense white. His boots crunched softly over gravel as he passed the church steeple and the old ferry dock, where the waters lapped in rhythmic hushes. He was heading somewhere he had never dared go before, the abandoned hunting cabin past the pine ridge. It had been empty for decades, a place of whispered warnings and village superstition. Children said it was cursed. Elders avoided it altogether. But Lucas had drawn it last week, completely by accident. He had been half asleep when the image poured from his pencil: dark timbers, broken shutters, a lantern hanging from a crooked beam. And now, something pulled at him, something deep and silent and irresistible. Halfway through the woods, the trees grew taller and closer. Pine needles scattered like snow across his shoulders. Then, without warning, he heard it, a low hum, almost like a voice humming a lullaby.
Soft.
Slow. Ancient. He froze. The path ahead was no longer familiar. The trees twisted unnaturally, forming an arch overhead. Beneath it stood something, a figure.
Tall. Cloaked.
Still as stone. Lucas's heart thudded in his chest. He took a step back, but the ground behind him was suddenly soft, sinking. He turned to see that the trail had vanished, swallowed by moss and fog. The only way now was forward. The figure raised a hand. In its palm was something small and metallic, catching the dim light through the mist.
A key.
Lucas didn't know why, but he stepped forward. He reached out. And then the forest changed. The trees sighed, the wind roared in his ears, and 1,000 voices whispered all at once, voices that sounded like echoes from his own drawings. Then silence. The figure was gone, and Lucas stood alone, holding an old brass key, colder than ice in his hand. That night, Lucas couldn't sleep. The key lay hidden beneath his pillow, but he felt its presence as if it pulsed with a quiet heartbeat. It was old, almost black with age, carved with tiny symbols he didn't recognize. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the cloaked figure. No face, no voice.
Just that hand and the key.
At dawn, he crept downstairs. The house was silent. His parents had left early for the village bakery, and his younger sister, Clara, was still asleep. Lucas slipped out the door with a satchel, a torch, and a notebook. He headed east, toward the pine ridge again, tracing the same path through the mist. But this time, the air felt warmer, tinged with a strange scent, like burnt herbs and snow. The forest had changed overnight. Trees leaned in closer, shadows moved strangely, and the birds were silent. After nearly an hour, he found it, the hunting cabin, just as he had drawn it. Its roof sagged, one shutter dangled from rusted hinges, and the front steps were swallowed by creeping ivy. A lantern still hung from the crooked beam, as if waiting. Lucas approached cautiously. The key in his pocket grew cold again, like it sensed the place. The door had no handle, but at the center of the wooden surface, half covered by age and bark, was a small brass plate, with a keyhole. His fingers trembled as he inserted the key. The lock turned with a heavy click, and the door creaked open. Inside, the air was thick with dust and secrets. Broken furniture, torn maps, and shattered glass littered the floor. But the strangest thing was what lay at the center of the room. An enormous wooden desk, untouched by dust. Upon it, an open book, a quill suspended midair, and a candle that flared to life as Lucas stepped closer. The book's pages were filled with drawings. Not just any drawings. His drawings. Sketches he had never shown anyone. Forest gates. Clock towers. Forgotten staircases. And a name written over and over again in neat, careful ink. Lucas Bauer. He backed away. That was when he heard it again. The hum. And footsteps from beneath the floorboards. He wasn't alone. The humming deepened into something darker. A low, slow chanting that seemed to rise through the cracks in the cabin floor. Lucas stared at the floorboards, heart racing. Then a voice, barely above a whisper, drifted up. Lucas. He froze. The candle flickered, casting shadows across the pages. He grabbed the book and turned to run, but something shifted behind the desk. A small trapdoor, once hidden beneath a tattered rug, had opened, as if by command. He should have fled. Instead, he crouched and shone his torch into the dark beneath. Stone steps descended into the earth. He followed them. Below the cabin was a small stone chamber, circular and echoing. Shelves lined the walls, filled with jars of ink, bundles of dried leaves, metal tools, and more drawings, all his. But older, faded. Some looked decades old, some centuries. In the center of the room stood a mirror. Not a normal mirror. Its frame was forged of black iron, twisted like roots, and its surface shimmered not with reflection, but motion, swirling images, shapes, places Lucas didn't recognize. Then the voice again. You drew them. You found the door. You opened the passage. It came from behind the mirror. Lucas stepped closer. Within the mirror, a faint outline took shape. A girl's face.
Pale.
Eyes gray as mountain fog. She looked directly at him. Help me. The image faded. Lucas staggered back. The candle above flared again. Then the trapdoor slammed shut. He was locked in. He ran up the steps and pounded on the wood. Silence. Then footsteps again. But this time from outside the cabin.
Slow.
Heavy. Someone or something was waiting above. The trapdoor creaked open on its own. Lucas scrambled out, breath shallow, and darted behind the desk. He peeked through the window and saw it. A figure, tall and thin, wrapped in dark wool and leaning on a staff of polished ash. Its face was hidden beneath a hood, but it stood motionless among the trees, as though carved from stone. Lucas didn't move. He didn't breathe. Then the figure raised its staff, and the pine trees bowed slightly, as though answering a silent command. The wind picked up. The humming returned, louder now, more voices joining in. The mirror in the cellar had shown a girl. Was she trapped? Was it his fault? He didn't know who the figure was, but deep down, he sensed it had been watching him long before today. A sudden knock at the cabin door startled him. 3 sharp raps. He approached slowly. A voice, young, clear, urgent, called from outside. Lucas? Lucas Bauer? He swung the door open. A boy stood on the steps. About his age, red hair, a battered coat too big for his frame. My name's Elias, he said quickly. I know what you are. Lucas blinked. What? You're a drofser. A seer of ink. One who draws the lost places back into the world. Lucas said nothing. I've been looking for you, Elias said. They've all been looking for you.
A pause.
Before they find you first, Elias led Lucas deeper into the forest, away from the cabin and the watcher that still stood unmoving among the trees. As they walked, Lucas noticed how the path beneath their feet grew firmer, the mist thinning, almost as if the forest itself approved of their passage. We don't have much time, Elias said, eyes scanning the woods. They know you've found the cabin. That means they'll come for the mirror soon. Who are they? Lucas asked, clutching the book in his satchel. They call themselves the Bleachers. Elias replied grimly. They drain color from the world. They erase. What you draw, they want to undo. Lucas couldn't understand why. His drawings weren't magic, were they? Elias led him to a clearing. At its center stood a tall stone arch half covered in ivy, with ancient runes carved into its surface. The moment Lucas stepped through, the world shifted. They stood inside an underground hall. Walls of silver-stained oak towered above them, and in the center burned a circular hearth. Around it sat 5 figures cloaked in gray, faces lit by firelight. Welcome, Lucas Bauer, one of them said. We are the Order of the Inkbound. They explained everything. Long ago, a handful of children were born with the gift of recall, the ability to draw lost places, hidden truths, and even forbidden doors. Over centuries, the Order protected these children, trained them, and helped them navigate the blurred line between imagination and reality. You are the first in over 100 years, the eldest said. But I don't understand, Lucas whispered. Why me? Because you saw her, Elias said quietly. The girl in the mirror. Lucas nodded. She is one of us, said the elder. But she was taken, and only your gift can bring her back. Her name was Alina Strauss. She had vanished 56 years ago, the youngest seer in the Order, drawn into her own reflection during a failed retrieval. trapped in the mirror realm, a place between thought and memory, ruled by the bleachers. She's been leaving echoes, Elias said, trying to reach someone who can finish what she started. Lucas sat quietly by the hearth, the book open before him. On the last page, new ink had appeared. A sketch of Alina's face, her eyes looking directly at him. "She's guiding you," the elder said. "But mirrors are dangerous. If you linger too long, they take more than your image." "How do I reach her?"
Lucas asked.
"You must draw the gate. The real one. The one she never finished." Lucas hesitated. "But I don't know what it looks like." "You will," the elder said. "You've already seen the pieces." Over the next days, Lucas trained under the order. He practiced tracing lost images, feeling the pulse of objects hidden from the world. They showed him how to see memory in wood grain, how to hear whispers in broken stone, how to draw with silence. Every evening, he returned to the cabin. The mirror began to change. The more he drew, the clearer Alina became. She no longer called for help. She gave him instructions. One day, as the sun set behind the mountains, Lucas completed a new drawing. A towering archway made of bone and smoke. And as he finished the last line, the mirror cracked. The mirror's surface rippled like disturbed water. Lucas stood before it, his reflection warping with each heartbeat. "Is this it?" he whispered. Alina's voice echoed from the broken glass. "It's open. But it won't stay open long." Elias stood behind him, gripping a satchel of protective charms. "You don't have to go alone," he said. But Lucas shook his head. "She called me.
She showed me.
I'll find her." He stepped into the mirror. The sensation was like plunging into ice. He fell through color, through sound, through sketches torn from his past. Faces of villagers, drawings he had never shared, even memories of his sister, Clara, laughing by the lake, all flitted past him like ashes in wind. Then silence. He stood on a black plain under a white sky. The mirror realm. It stretched endlessly in every direction, flat and quiet. Objects floated midair, chairs, books, forgotten shoes, half-finished portraits. It was a place of lost things. He walked for what felt like hours. Finally, he saw her. Alina, trapped inside a suspended glass sphere, her hands pressed to the inside, eyes wide with hope and fear. But between them, rising from the earth, stood the cloaked figure, the Watcher, now fully visible. Its face was blank, not hidden, but erased. Its cloak was stitched with names, fading slowly, and in its hand, it held a black quill, dripping with ink darker than shadow. It spoke without sound. "You are the last." The Watcher lunged. Ink exploded from its staff, wrapping around Lucas like chains. He gasped, falling to his knees as the black liquid crawled up his arms, trying to reach his mouth, his eyes. Alina pounded on the inside of the sphere, screaming silently. Lucas reached for his satchel. His fingers brushed the edge of his own sketchbook, soaked, but untouched by the ink. With one final burst of strength, he pulled a pencil from his sleeve and scrawled across a blank page.
A blade. Silver.
Sharp. Engraved with the runes of the order. It shimmered into life beside him. He grabbed it and slashed through the ink chains. The Watcher shrieked, staggering back. Alina's prison cracked. But it wasn't over. The Watcher plunged its quill into the sky, and the mirror realm began to bleed, black tears falling from the heavens, burning through the ground. Lucas dodged and sketched again. This time, a shield, then wings, then a tower. Each sketch became real, if only for moments. The Watcher matched him blow for blow, reshaping reality with each strike. But Lucas noticed something. Every time the Watcher created, part of it faded. Its cloak, its staff, its power. It wasn't infinite. Lucas dropped his blade and began to draw not weapons, but memory. His sister. His village. Alina, smiling. The Order's fire. The scent of pine. Images of home. The realm trembled. The Watcher screamed and shattered into ink and wind. The glass sphere burst. Alina fell to the ground, coughing, pale but alive. She looked up at Lucas, her eyes filled with gratitude and recognition. "I remember you," she said softly. "You were the boy in my last drawing. You weren't born yet, but I saw you." He helped her to her feet. Together, they faced the crumbling mirror realm. It was collapsing. The ground cracked, the sky split, and the floating objects began to fall. Lucas opened his book and sketched a doorway, wooden, old, carved with the same runes from the arch in the forest. It glowed. They stepped through. Back in the cabin, the mirror exploded behind them, turning to dust. The Order was waiting outside. So was Elias. Alina stepped into the sunlight for the first time in half a century. And Lucas collapsed. He had drawn too much.